Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our read-through of my lost novel, The Tremendous Trio Trial by Fire. I am recording this on Tuesday, right after, or I should say the day after, the previous chapter. However, things got a little bit later tonight, and I figured it probably wasn't going to be a good idea to post this the same night that I record it, and Wednesdays aren't typically good for me to be able to record anything anyway, so I'm going to push this off and post this on Wednesday instead. But we are going to go into Chapter 6, An Unexpected Ally. In the story so far, we've met our tremendous trio. We have had them kidnapped and placed in this facility. They made a breakaway attempt, but in the previous chapter, they were cornered by a bunch of guards in a broom closet and apparently somehow managed to hold out for an hour. Well, good luck doing that. But after that, they were flushed out by the one of the characters, Richard, being turned into a jaguar. One thing I didn't mention in the last video that I think I probably should have worked on is that the other characters don't really seem to react as much as they probably should to something like that. But, you know, it's one of those things that can be tweaked a little bit. One way or the other, after they were flushed out and the three of them were captured, Michael and Jessica were separated, but Michael was able to make his way out of his holding area by using a pocket knife. And so he is now wandering around the facility again, and he's run into the individual who gives this chapter its title, Agent French, the FBI agent who we met at the beginning of the story, who is dressed as a guard and messing around with a computer in a side room in this facility. So we're going to see what's going on here, what happens as we move forward, starting here in Chapter 6. Michael continued to stare at the man in startled surprise. "What in the world are you doing here?" he asked finally. "I could ask the same of you," French said. "As for me, I'm investigating, as always." Michael relaxed slightly, still looking at the other man. "Investigating? How did you find this place?" No question mark. "Actually, they found me," Jacob said, already turned back towards the computer and working through the information. "It seems that they wanted to get rid of the officer in charge of the government investigation, gum up the works, if you know what I mean." He turned back to stare at the other man. "I believe you still haven't answered my question." "Same as you, except for the investigation part. They kidnapped me to use as a test subject," Michael responded. "So, how did you get out?" "Trickery, speed, and a bit of luck," Jake said. "Actually, a lot of luck. I'm not even exactly sure how I got away from the last two guards, but they apparently took a wrong turn." "And you?" "First time, two quick-thinking companions and a lot of luck. Second time, a pocket knife and a lot of luck," Michael said. "Wait, so you've been in a holding cell twice?" asked Jacob. "Yeah, they seem to be on low security right now," Michael said. "There were absolutely no guards outside my room last time." "Actually, it's increased security," Jacob corrected. He waited for Michael to join him at the computer. "Most security units have been moved to defend the main laboratory. It would seem they've got something happening down there." He pointed to the screen. It showed a good many red dots concentrated on one area, while only a few red dots were elsewhere on the map. "This is a map of the locations of all their security units in the facility. They've all got trackers on so that the scientists know where they are at all times." "Sweet. For us, anyway." Michael looked over the diagram. "This map is updated," he mumbled to himself. He looked to where the exit had been on the other map. He raised an eyebrow as he saw the reason for the increased security. "So that other floor plan was incomplete," he said. Instead of the exit, he saw the door now led through a large semicircular room and into yet another maze of halls. We were headed right into the enemy's headquarters. And why did they take him away from it? "Pardon?" "When I escaped the first time, I went towards that room with my companions. In an old floor plan, that door led out. It was one of only 3 exits." Michael traced over the map with his finger. "Here there are 7. He traced to the exit nearest to where he and his friends had been. "They were so close and we didn't know." "Who exactly were these companions? Anyone I know?" asked Jake. "Not likely, unless you know Richard and Jessica Carson," responded Michael. "No, I don't recall meeting any Carsons." "Surprising. I think you government agents let's try this again. I'd think you government agents would meet a person with just about any last name, with all the people you talk to." "Whatever. All I said is that I don't remember any Carsons. There are more important things to worry about right now." Jake turned to Michael and handed him a pistol. You got some punctuation snafu here as well. "Watch the door while I check for something." Michael took the pistol and aimed it at the door like Richard had done. Once again, the sound of typing came from the keyboard. Michael saw a change in the reflection in his glasses as the information on screen changed. Interesting, I don't believe that glasses were mentioned prior to this. By the way, Michael said presently, where did you get the costume? Where do you think? I blindsided a guard on patrol. He was sort of looking the other direction and was quite easy to dispose of. Jake paused in his typing a moment. 2 test subjects have just arrived at their main facility, he mumbled quietly. May God help them. How do you know that? Asked Michael. He turned halfway around, trying to see the screen. It isn't on the computer, Jacob said, seeing Michael turning. It's on the 2-way radio, an all-points bulletin. Wait a second, you're wearing the radio? Doesn't that mean that they could track you? Yeah, but it isn't that bad. They can't tell me from another guard. After all, no alert was put out. I got him clean. Jake typed some more, then turned to Michael. Carson, you said? Excuse me? The guys you were with, Richard and Jessica Carson, correct? Yeah, I thought you said you hadn't heard of them, Michael responded. I hadn't, Jacob confirmed. Their names just came over the radio. They're the test subjects. I hope they'll be all right. By the way, how did they know their names? Any one of a number of ways, Jacob responded. You could find out most people's names just by what they carry with them. Wallets, lockets, ID cards, stuff like that. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound simple, Michael said. By the way, there wouldn't be anything on the antidotes to their formulas in there, would there? Jacob held up a slip of paper in front of Michael. As soon as his eyes adjusted to the proximity of the paper, Michael could see a printout of several long chemical formulae. Beside each was the name of an animal. Found them first thing. They seem to have mastered about 15 different animals for the time being, Jacob said. When I get out, I'm going to make sure they don't get any more. Michael scanned the room for a moment until he found what he wanted. We ought to prepare a few doses of the antidote while we're here, he said, motioning stiffly towards a tall, black machine. It's a chemical synthesizer. Good one by the looks of it. If you want to do that while I do this, go ahead, Jacob said. Michael nodded and handed the gun to Jacob before moving to the machine. Soon the two were hard at work, each doing their own business. Each doing their own business? Michael synthesized a few of the antidotes, then found a few syringes and stuck them with the antidotes into a bag that was lying on the table. Very convenient to have all this stuff in this area. Jacob examined the information on the computer screen one more time. All right, I think I've got all that I need. He turned to Michael. Now what to do with you? I'm going to need to leave, that's for sure, but I can't have you walking around with me like nothing was happening. That's a way to get a free one-way ticket to a cell. How about holding me at gunpoint, Michael asked. That seems the popular way to move prisoners around in here. No, I will need the gun available to take out anyone who comes at us. Well, I guess we'll have to try our luck. Walk behind me. If anyone comes at us, try to hide. We'll see if we can get an outfit that way. Jake motioned to the door. The two were soon walking quietly down the halls, listening for footsteps in hope of being able to spring an ambush. They couldn't decide if they were incredibly lucky, or if they were incredibly unlucky. Nice. Or if they were incredibly unlucky, but they met no one for about 10 minutes. Suddenly, Michael began to get a feeling that he'd been going through these same halls before. How he could tell in this maze of monochromatic halls he couldn't remember, but it soon came to him. The lights. Now broken and dead bulbs were becoming more frequent. Wait, are we headed to the main lab? He asked, confused. Yeah, how'd you know? Asked Jake. I can wait. As for now, can you explain the why? Oof, that's a rough bit of phrasing there. Can you explain the why of your going into the heart of the enemy's territory? I stole Lord of the Rings line here. Simple. The closer we are to danger, the farther we are from harm, Jake said as they rounded another bend. It's one of those things where I wonder if I even remember that's where I got it from. Gotta watch my my media, my cliches. One way or the other, I gotta make sure that I'm a little bit more careful of including things that sound like they probably come from somewhere else, because they absolutely come from somewhere else. Alright. I hate bad logic, Michael mumbled, shaking his head. Why are we really headed that direction? Well, you want to get your friends back, right? Asked Jake. Yeah, sure, but you don't think there might be a less dangerous way of doing this? Not really. You see, I think that once they are released, they should be guarded only very lightly. Why, don't you think they are the reason that the guards congregate on the main lab? Asked Michael. No, the guards were moving in that direction before I got out. I noticed it as they led me to the computer lab. There's something else happening there. Very well, whatever you say. Just don't go and get both of us caught, all right? Done, Jake confirmed. They continued through the halls, moving quickly now that they were in basically unoccupied territory. As they approached the room where he had seen the map, Michael noted that they had taken a different turn. They were now heading through fully lighted halls, yet Jake moved as though they were still safe. Finally, after several minutes of walking, Jake started to exercise more caution. "The prisoners are heading this direction," he whispered. "We should be able to catch them here." He stopped and waited at the corner and quickly made sure that his gun was ready. "Get ready. This could be rough." Michael leaned against the wall. "Got that map pretty much memorized, eh?" Michael asked quietly. Jake gave him a strange look and held up a printout of the map. "Oh." They waited anxiously, listening intently to every noise. Finally, they heard footsteps, first soft, then getting louder as they approached. Michael noticed presently they were somewhat louder than usual. Suddenly, with realization etched on his face, he leaned over to Jacob. "Hooves," he whispered in his partner's ear. Jake nodded. "A horse. It's the only hoofed animal they have so far," he explained. He was now taking slow, quiet breaths, preparing himself for what was to come. "Get ready." He tensed, raising the gun to shoulder level. Just then a guard appeared around the corner. Jacob dealt a quick blow with the gun across the man's head, then attacked a second guard that had appeared. Michael was stuck in place, watching in disbelief as his partner quickly dispatched the second guard and dropped to one knee, checking for more enemies. "I have to learn how to do that," he said as Jacob relaxed. "Indeed, I would have appreciated some help," Jacob responded. He then walked out of sight around the corner. Michael followed and saw the Jaguar with which he had parted ways only a few hours before, as well as the horse, which was obviously unnerved by the fight and probably the narrow halls that enclosed it. Jacob was kneeling, searching through a pack that a guard had dropped. "Cool, looks as though they had yet to get rid of their stuff. I'd probably say have yet. Still have their clothes and their stuff, and 2 extra pistols. Very nice. Hurry up, let's get these 2 out of the hall." The two partners had soon led the Jaguar and the horse into a room to the side. After a few moments of deliberating, they decided to leave the suppression collar on the Jaguar until the antidote had time to act. They administered the antidote to Richard and waited patiently until he had reverted to his human form, then waited for him to get dressed. "It's amazing that he still has his wits about him after what he's been through," Jacob said as they waited. "The suppression collar not only suppresses aggressive tendencies, it also suppresses fear and nervousness. Once it's taken off, it'll probably be a bundle of nerves for a while. On that count, I believe that we should transfer it to Jessica before we give her the antidote." "Agreed," said Jake. "I think in this case, this is implying that Jessica does not have a suppression collar on, and where she may not be a predator in this moment, a perturbed, what's the word I want to use, a horse that has been disturbed is probably plenty dangerous enough that they should probably have something. I'm also just thinking, like, oh, just have a horse wandering around here. I don't know. If they're doing these kind of tests, I'd probably figure they'd probably have an outdoor area for it instead of walking them through the halls of a repurposed storage facility. So, excuse me. That's probably something that I would adjust as well. But continuing here. "Agreed," said Jake. After a few more minutes, Richard's voice came to them. "I'm done," came the flat, emotionless words. Jake and Michael turned around towards the voice. It's like a horse and a voice at the same time. Jake and Michael turned around towards the voice. There stood Richard, fully human again, and dressed as one of the guards. "All right, let's get that collar off," Michael said. It took them a few minutes until they finally figured out how to get it off. As Michael had predicted, Richard was quite frazzled by the whole experience, and was a nervous wreck for a few minutes after the collar's removal. While he was recovering from his frightening experience, the other 2 administered the antidote to Jessica, and waited while she readied herself. She was unable to use the guard's outfit, but Jake assured them that he could find her an outfit later. She was even more unnerved than her brother, and continued to shake and sob for a while after the collar had been removed. Michael dressed in a guard's outfit while Jessica gathered her nerves. It was a surprisingly good fit, considering Michael's weak build. He was ready much before either of his companions had recovered, and assisted Jake in trying to help them get themselves back into their right minds. Though she had been worse than Richard at first, Jessica recovered first. She was still a bit shaken, but she knew what had to be done, and she was willing to do it. I think having the 2 comfort each other would probably be a good direction to go there. "We have to get rid of this entire operation," she said bitterly. "We can't let them do this to anyone else." "I don't really know how we can do that. They've probably expanded far beyond this building," said Jake. "We have to," Jessica yelled, turning to face him. "We must get rid of this installation at the very least. Anything to damage their operation. We can't let them continue. This entire thing is inhumane." She's right, said Michael. If we let them go on, we have conspired with these maniacs. We can't let anyone else be subjected to this torture. Not torture, Richard stuttered, shaking slightly as he tried to put the words together. Much worse than torture. We have to stop them. I mean, much worse than torture is like, Seems a little like, what is worse than torture? It's just a worse torture. Whatever. What do you say, Jake? You with us? Asked Michael. Well, it doesn't look like I have much choice now, does it? Just one question. How do we go about destroying this operation? I have a plan, but you guys will have to be with me every step of the way, said Michael. He stared earnestly at his friends' faces. Michael, I admire your spirit, but you haven't exactly earned my trust yet. I think it would be better if I made the plan, Jacob said quietly. Let Michael tell us his plan. Everyone turned to look at Richard. The stuttering was gone. In place of the pained and tortured look that had covered his face a minute before was a look of grim resolve. He's one of us. He's come with us this far. He has an equal say in what we do. He turned to Jake, which is more than I can say for you. All right, here's what I think. If we can cripple their computer systems, I think we can destroy a lot of their information. So we should go to their main lab and do as much damage there as humanly possible. Are you crazy, Michael? Jake exclaimed. That's suicide on top of being ill-conceived. First, how will we slip past their defenses? Second, how do we do the damage? Pistols won't be enough to take this operation out. Then, how do we get out? The answer to your first question is simple, said Michael. We distract their guards. Something tells me that they would rather have the chance of an attack on their main lab than to let a prisoner escape. So, Michael held up a small piece of metal with a push button on it. We give them an alert so close to an exit that the guard group at the main lab will be significantly decreased. This means that one of us will be separated from the others, but it will give us more time and a much better chance of success. As for your second question, Michael drew a small black ball from his pocket. We'll use their own explosives against them. If my estimate is correct, we only need about 20 of these babies to do in all the computers in any of these rooms. I think we can safely go as low as 15. Then all we have to do is activate them. How do we propose to do that? Asked Richard. These things are very sensitive. All we need is one remote activator and some strategically placed bombs. Then the first explosion will activate the others. All right, so it might work, Jacob admitted. One question, though. Who's going to give them the signal? I believe that, seeing as you're the most seasoned of us when it comes to stealthily infiltrating enemy territory, you should go. Not on your life. I want some of the action. Now here I have two characters talking without indicators. I believe this is Michael up top and then Jacob. Still a little bit confusing. You'll have more than enough action for 5 people when you press that button. That, and I'm not taking no for an answer, insisted Michael. I like to remind you that I have superiority to you, Jake said coldly. Usually, yes, but not today. For now, you've left the FBI, and I'll be giving the orders. Before Jake could retort, Richard interrupted him. Sounds like a plan. First things first, let's get those explosives. Jacob gave in for the time being and led the way to the armory. When they reached it, they had to deal with a group of guards that was guarding the door. Guard and guarding. That's what they do. They were able to out-duel, probably a hyphenated word, able to out-duel the guards quickly enough, but hurried just in case one of them had sent off a signal. Jessica was able to salvage a uniform from one of these and changed in an adjoining room while the others collected weapons. They discovered that, though the rifles they had seen earlier were empty, the armory did have plenty of ammunition for them. They had soon stocked up, and Phase 2 of the plan began. And that leads us to Chapter 7, Desperate Measures. But for tonight, that's going to be the whole of it, so let's go into the commentary section here. There is a feeling I get sometimes with my writing that came back around for this particular chapter, which is that even though a lot of things technically happen in this chapter, there are long sections where it is a lot of dialogue not going very far. Like, it's not driving the story with any kind of real motor. So you have the beginning section here where Michael and Jacob are doing their things. Jacob is messing with the computer, and we have him messing with the computer and them talking for like 2 pages, and it's just like not a whole lot there. Michael does split off and make the antidotes, but that's also a little vague. It's one of those things where it's one of those parts in the story where, what am I going to add to that? It's not like I have the antidotes in front of me. I can say more about them. I could give a little bit more detail, like color, or give like some more clarity on exactly what syringes he's finding here. Given the fact that I'm probably dealing with, I'm probably considering a more science fiction, slightly futuristic setting, probably would use that to my advantage a little more if I were to rewrite this and help to cover my butt for the fact that, yeah, we're just dealing with science fiction antidotes, and not a whole lot of detail on that. The break there of having the well, really honestly, just Jacob taking out the guards to save Jessica and Richard. Yeah, it's fair enough. Again, I feel like there should be restraints on the horse as well, and probably I would move some of this plot to some outdoor area. I'm thinking if you are going in here, taking this abandoned storage facility, and you're turning it into a lab as it is, you can probably have them enclose a courtyard of some sort and use that to deal with a lot of the animals. I think that's probably something that I would want to do. I was just looking here and seeing this as well. The prior to the map, like, yeah, it's kind of a little bit of, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be funny, but I probably still have Michael notice that Jacob has the map earlier. Oh, pardon me. But as they get the antidotes and they turn their friends back and they have their little moment there, I think I probably need to put a little bit more thought into how best to have Jessica and Richard be functional for the rest of the plot, while also giving them a little bit more of a reaction to this. The intent was always, as far as I recall, that the formulas are improved to the point where they're not completely reducing the people to nervous wrecks more or less permanently, as is kind of implied in the first chapter. I was going to call it the prologue, but technically I called it chapter 1. So I'd have to think about that. What would I do to have them dealing with that? One trope I do like to use, and I've liked to use for a while, is to have some animalistic traits persist and have those kind of create a little bit of a identity crisis for them. So that's an idea. Once again, they do still have to be competent, but having them have some kind of animalistic tendencies, some tics, may actually make it more interesting as we're moving into the action here in Chapter 7 to see what they're doing. Now, one thing I don't like that I did here is I do think that having Michael create a plan and have the plan work out, at this point, I don't think Jacob, he could have figured it out or could have found this, but it's pretty much implied that the explosives are not something that he's personally aware of. So Michael could contribute that. I think I would still have Jacob contribute more, if for no better reason than the fact that he is supposed to be FBI. He is supposed to be a little bit more of a professional here, and even if I were to make some adjustments to the ages of the characters, as I've mentioned before, because it is a little bit silly that you have a couple of 17-year-olds and a 19-year-old here in the situation where I have them. I don't necessarily just hate that, like having young characters, but in a situation where you have somebody who is competent in a way that the young characters are not, I still think that if the young characters are going to contribute in a big way to things, then they need to prove themselves to the experienced character. And one of the ways that I think I can work with that in this plot is to have Michael reveal the explosives and explain the explosives here. I'm not sure about heading to the armory and looking for the explosives. Let me actually scroll down here. I don't think it says here that they got explosives from the armory, so it may just be that they are getting weapons to get the explosives, because I was just thinking, I'm not sure they would have those explosives in the armory, considering the fact that when they were originally discovered, they were discovered with a shipment of the formula as a contingency plan to get rid of the formula if it were to be discovered. So, it's possible that what the criticism I was about to give may not actually be accurate. I was going to say that I'm not sure if they have explosives in the armory. It's entirely possible they don't, and I'm just misidentifying what they're going for here, and they're going to get the explosives later. One way or the other, I probably would, like I said, have some way that this planning ends up being a little bit more of a collaborative effort, let's say, between Michael and Jake, with possibly some contributions from Richard and Jessica. Thinking that Richard and Jessica, like, they're not the ones that know as well as the other two the layout of the facility, and especially not as well as the two the actual layout versus what they saw on the outdated floor plan. So they probably wouldn't contribute as much. Once again, I don't particularly care for the really superficial level angst here from Richard. It's like, oh, it's much worse than torture. It's like, okay, what does that mean? What does that come from? Why are you distressed in this case? And again, having that little bit of like the identity crisis, the mental effects that at least partially persist after the change, I think, is one way to have that be effective more than just like this very vague statement. I also would just probably change this statement because like it's a kind of torture. It's like it's horrible torture or something. I have to workshop some better way to go through this. Part of the reason that I'm not in a huge hurry to do that, beyond just the fact that I'm not taking this story in its current form, most likely, and doing anything with it, is that if I am going to take this idea and try to write it in a way that I would be comfortable with putting out there in any form outside of this kind of commentary way, I would probably completely rewrite this dialogue, not just this line, but the dialogue exchange as a whole that's happening here as they are administering the antidotes and recovering and all that. Probably allow there to be a little bit more time to sit with something here. Another thing I'm not super happy with so far is that we really have not encountered any other prisoners. I've commented on the shortness of this novel, both in I say novel, and it's probably doesn't even qualify for that, novella or whatever, but the shortness of this story compared to other things that I've written in the recent past, and commented both positively and negatively on that. In the positive end, I think sometimes I do just go off and describe things and explain things in detail that is completely unnecessary in the context of what I'm writing. But it's situations like this where they're recovering here, and also the fact that we've been in this facility and have like now we're plotting to try to cripple this facility, and we are not at any point so far in this process talking about other people who are captured in this facility. I think it would be interesting to have interactions with other victims, other test subjects, whether that be test subjects that have already been tested on and are animals, test subjects who may have been tested on and the antidote has been administered, and so now they're human again, and maybe different levels of success and how well the antidote has worked on them. That sort of thing. And whether you have that sort of thing show up in the story or not, you probably should have, I probably should have the characters comment on other people, other possible victims as they're discussing this plan, because I think they have to consider that. If nothing else, they should say something along the lines of, before we destroy the computers, we need to see what we can do to try to let people out, or possibly after, since this is still a converted storage facility, and the way that Michael got out, implies that at the very least, the storage area where he was being held wasn't really converted much more than just making sure there was only a button on the outside so that you couldn't open it from the inside. So you probably can't count on there being like a central console from which you can open all the doors or anything. But still, I think the characters should probably consider the other people that are probably in this facility. And that's the other thing. I say probably because, like, we haven't seen them. We've not discussed any other people who are captured in this facility outside of the trio, except for Jacob himself. And we just randomly ran into him as he escaped. I'm pretty sure that that his escape is the reason for the initial alarm. At least that was the intention originally. So, yeah, there's definitely some things here I'm looking at and I'm thinking I could improve. But at the same time, it is interesting moving forward here. I'm going to see what happens, how this plan works out. Know the best laid plans of mice and men and all, so probably not great. But we'll have to wait until next time for that. So please join me for that next time when we read Chapter 7, Desperate Measures.